The silence was a language Alara understood better than words. It was the cold, hard language of the stones in her hovel, the unforgiving expanse of the blizzard that raged outside, and a vast, echoing cavern where her voice should have been. A rogue wolf attack years ago had stolen two things from her: the sound of her own scream and the unmarred skin of her throat and shoulder. The pack healer had saved her life, but the jagged, silver scars remained, a permanent testament to her weakness. They branded her not as a survivor, but as a failure, an Omega who couldn't even defend herself. The pack's alpha, Marcus, never missed an opportunity to remind her of it. His words were lashes, reopening wounds that never truly closed. A broken wolf is a useless wolf, he'd sneered just this morning, tossing a meager piece of dried meat at her feet as if she were a dog. The others had laughed, their amusement a bitter wind that chilled her more than the storm. Now, that storm was a physical entity, a monstrous beast of ice and wind intent on swallowing the world. She was meant to be gathering firewood, a fool's errand in a blizzard of this magnitude, but it was a punishment disguised as a chore, a way to push her to the very edge of survival, to see if she would finally break. The cold seeped into her bones, a familiar ache that mirrored the hollowness in her chest. Each gust of wind felt like a shove from an invisible hand, pushing her deeper into the white oblivion. Why did she keep going? The question was a silent scream in her mind. What was she fighting for? A life of scraps and scorn? A future where the only touch she knew was a kick or a shove. Her hands, wrought and numb, fumbled with the thin cloak wrapped around her. It offered little protection. The cold was winning. Drowsiness, sweet and treacherous, began to curl at the edges of her consciousness. Perhaps this was it. Perhaps this was the end the goddess had planned for her. A quiet, frozen surrender. Just as her knees began to buckle, a scent cut through the blinding snow. It was rich, primal, and laced with the sharp tang of blood. It was wolf, but unlike any she had ever known. It spoke of ancient forests, of mountain peaks that scraped the heavens, of power so immense it felt like a physical weight in the air. Curiosity, a long-dormant instinct, warred with her fear. She pushed against the wall of wind, following the scent to a small clearing shielded by ancient pines. There, sprawled against the snow-dusted earth, was a wolf. He was magnificent, a creature of midnight fur and impossible size, larger than any two wolves in her pack combined. His coat was the deep, starless black of a new moon sky, and even in his stillness, he radiated an aura of absolute authority. But he was wounded. A deep, vicious gash ran along his flank, oozing dark blood that steamed against the pristine snow. His breathing was shallow, his powerful form trembling with pain and cold. Panic seized her. Every instinct screamed at her to run. A lone wolf of this size was a threat, a rogue, a danger beyond comprehension. He could kill her with a single snap of his powerful jaws. Her pack would not mourn her. They would call it a fitting end for the useless, scarred Omega. But then the great wolf's head lifted just an inch. His eyes, the color of molten gold, met hers. There was no aggression in them, no threat, only a profound, ancient weariness and a flicker of something else. A plea, a recognition. In that moment, he was not a monster. He was a fellow creature, suffering at the edge of the world, just as she was. Her compassion, the one part of her the pack had never managed to beat into submission, surged forward. She could not leave him here to die. She was small, and he was immense. The task was impossible. Yet, the thought of walking away, of leaving him to the mercy of the storm, was more impossible still. She ripped a long strip from the hem of her worn tunic, her fingers clumsy with cold. With painstaking slowness, she approached him, her movements small and non-threatening. She expected a growl, a baring of teeth. Instead, he simply watched her, his golden eyes tracking her every move. She knelt beside him, the snow soaking through the thin fabric of her trousers. "I won't hurt you," she thought, the words forming a silent prayer. She gently pressed the cloth against the bleeding wound. A low rumble vibrated through his chest, a sound of pure agony, but he did not move. He bore the pain with a stoicism that shamed her own self-pity. Getting him back to her small cave at the edge of the territory would be a monumental effort. But as she looked into those golden eyes, she knew she had no other choice. In his suffering, she saw a reflection of her own. And for the first time in a long, long time, Ilera felt a flicker of purpose. She would not let this magnificent creature perish in the same cold, silent world that was trying to claim her. The journey back was a blur of excruciating effort. Ilera looped her thin cloak around the wolf's massive chest and pulled. She was a ship anchor trying to move a mountain. Every muscle in her small frame screamed in protest. The wind tore at them, a relentless predator trying to rip her prize from her grasp. The great wolf, despite his injury, seemed to understand. He would try to shift his weight, to push with his hind legs, lending what little strength he had to her cause. They moved inch by agonizing inch, a two-being testament to sheer will. Her cave was little more than a hollowed-out space in the rock face, ignored by the pack because it was too small and too far from the warmth of the main den. For Ilera, it was a sanctuary. It was hers. She managed to drag him inside, his massive form filling most of the cramped space. He collapsed onto the packed earth floor with a heavy groan, his golden eyes fluttering closed. For a moment, she feared she was too late. But then his chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm. He was alive. The fire pit was cold, her meager supply of wood long since exhausted. Shivering, she used her body heat to shield his, huddling close to his massive form. His fur was thick, but the cold had sunk deep into him. She used the last of her clean rags to tend to his wound, cleaning it as best she could with melted snow. The gash was deep, clearly not made by claw or tooth. It was unnaturally straight, as if made by a silver-laced blade. An assassin's weapon. Who would dare attack a creature of such power? She worked in silence, her hands gentle and sure. She had a quiet skill with healing herbs, a knowledge passed down from her grandmother before the pack had deemed her too strange, too quiet, too worthless to be taught anything more. She crushed the dried leaves of the winterfoil she kept in a small leather pouch and packed them into the wound to stave off infection. Throughout it all, the great wolf remained still, surrendering to her care with a trust that humbled her. Hours bled into a day, and then another. The blizzard raged on, sealing them inside their tiny haven. Ilera shared her scavenged food with him, the tough, dried meat she had been saving. At first, he refused, nudging the offering back toward her with his nose. His golden eyes seemed to see right through her, to the gnawing hunger she tried to hide. It was a silent argument. She pushed the meat back. He nudged it away. Finally, she broke the piece in two, eating one half herself to show him she was not depriving herself completely. Only then did he accept his portion, eating it with a delicate grace that seemed at odds with his size. They existed in a world without words. He would watch her with an unnerving intensity, as if he were memorizing the lines of her face, the silver tracks of the scars on her neck. She found herself talking to him in her mind, telling him about the pack, about Alpha Marcus, about the loneliness that was her constant companion. He would listen, his head cocked, his golden eyes soft with an emotion she couldn't name. It felt like understanding. He never pitied her. Instead, when his gaze fell upon her scars, it was with a strange reverence, a deep and sorrowful anger that was not directed at her, but the world that had marked her. On the third day, the storm broke. Sunlight, pale and watery, filtered into the cave. The wolf was stronger. The wound had begun to close, and the trembling had ceased. He stood, stretching his magnificent limbs, and the sheer power coiled in his frame took her breath away. He padded to the entrance of the cave and looked out, then turned back to her. He dipped his great head in a gesture that felt undeniably like a bow of gratitude. A warmth spread through Ilera's chest, a feeling so foreign she barely recognized it. It was appreciation. It was respect. She had done something that mattered. The moment was shattered by the sound of voices. "I tracked her scent this way, Alpha." The useless mute is hiding in these caves. It was Kale, one of Marcus's enforcers. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her newfound warmth. They had found her. Alpha Marcus appeared at the mouth of the cave, his lip curled in a familiar sneer. Behind him stood Kale and Seraphina, Marcus's chosen Luna, her beautiful face twisted with disgust. Hiding away like the vermin you are, Marcus spat, his eyes landing on the meager remnants of her food supply. And hoarding food while the pack rations. You are a disgrace, Elara. Seraphina's cruel gaze swept over the cave before landing on the massive black wolf standing protectively in front of Elara. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with greedy avarice. Marcus, look, a rogue. A fine pelt for my collection. Marcus's eyes lit up. A fine prize indeed. A fitting punishment for your defiance. We'll take its pelt, and you'll be flogged in front of the pack. He took a step forward, his hand shifting, ready to change. But the black wolf did not flinch. He let out a low growl, a sound that was not animalistic, but something far more terrifying. It was the sound of mountains grinding together, of ancient glaciers cracking. It was a sound of pure, undiluted authority that made the very air vibrate. Marcus froze, his alpha bravado faltering. Kale and Seraphina took an involuntary step back. What is this beast? Marcus stammered, his confidence draining away. The great wolf took a step forward, placing his body squarely between Elara and her tormentors. His golden eyes burned with a furious light. Then the impossible happened. The air around him shimmered, warping like heat rising from stone. Bones cracked and reformed, fur receded, and the massive wolf began to reshape. He grew taller, his form shifting from quadruped to bipedal. In a matter of seconds, where the wolf had stood, a man now towered. He was impossibly tall, with the same midnight black hair and powerful build. He was clad in dark, regal leathers that seemed to have formed with him. But it was his eyes that held them all captive, the same molten gold, now blazing with the fury of 1,000 suns. On a chain around his neck rested a heavy, ornate medallion, the crest of the Alpha King. Marcus's face went white with terror. Seraphina gasped, her hand flying her mouth. Kale dropped to his knees, his head pressed to the snowy ground. Your Majesty, Marcus choked out, his voice trembling as he fell to his knees in a clumsy, panicked bow. Alpha King Theron. We did not know. King Theron ignored him completely. His furious gaze was fixed on the Alpha of the Crescent Moon Pack, but his attention, his entire being, was focused on the small, trembling girl behind him. He turned slowly, his expression softening from divine rage to one of profound tenderness. He reached out a hand, not to touch her, but as an invitation. Elara stared, her mind reeling. The wolf, the man, the king. It was too much to comprehend. He was the alpha of all alphas, a near mythical figure who hadn't been seen in these territories for centuries. And she had been sharing her food with him, tending to his wounds as if he were a stray. He took a gentle step toward her. They hurt you, he said, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that seemed to echo in her very soul. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, laced with a pain that mirrored her own. His golden eyes drifted to the silvery marks on her neck and shoulder, visible above the collar of her tunic. The pack had always looked at them with disgust. Marcus saw weakness. Seraphina saw imperfection. The others saw a reason to mock her. King Theron saw something else entirely. His face, a mask of regal fury moments before, now softened with an emotion so raw, so potent, it stole the air from her lungs. It was reverence. Before she could react, before her mind could process the sheer unreality of the moment, the most powerful being she had ever known did the unthinkable. He knelt. The Alpha King, ruler of all werewolves, knelt in the dirt and snow of her miserable cave, bringing his eyes level with her scars. Marcus let out a strangled gasp. Seraphina looked as though she'd been struck. They were witnessing an act that defied all laws of their society, all notions of power and status. The strong did not kneel to the weak. The perfect did not bow to the broken. Theron reached out, his calloused fingers tracing the largest scar on her collarbone with a touch so gentle it was like the brush of a feather. A tremor ran through her, not of fear, but of a strange, overwhelming energy that flooded every part of her being. It was warmth. It was acceptance. It was a homecoming she never knew she was searching for. "These are not marks of shame," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his golden eyes locked on hers. "They are symbols of your strength. They tell the story of a battle you fought and a life you refused to surrender. They are more beautiful than any jewel, more precious than any crown." He leaned forward, and his lips, warm and soft, pressed against the scar on her throat. He kissed the jagged line of silvered skin, a slow, deliberate act of worship. He moved to the next, on her shoulder, kissing each mark with the same soul-shattering tenderness. Each kiss was a balm, healing wounds far deeper than the flesh. Each touch was a word, telling her she was not worthless, not broken, not a disgrace. With every kiss, a lifetime of shame began to crumble, turning to dust under the weight of his veneration. He was rewriting her story, transforming her brand of failure into a medal of honor. He looked up at her, his hands framing her face, his thumbs gently stroking her cheeks. "The moon goddess showed me a vision," he whispered, his voice for her alone. "A heart of pure compassion, a spirit of unbreakable will, hidden away in a pack that was blind to her light. I have searched for you for 200 years," his thumb brushed her lips. "You are my mate, Alara, my fated queen." The word struck her with the force of a physical blow. Mate, queen. The concepts were so alien, so far removed from her reality as the mute, scarred Omega, that her mind couldn't grasp them. But her soul could. It recognized the truth in his eyes, in his touch. A profound sense of rightness settled over her, a feeling of finally finding the missing piece of her own existence. Theron rose to his full, intimidating height, turning to face the still kneeling Alpha. His expression was once again one of cold, lethal fury. "You," he said, and the single word cracked like a whip in the silent air. "You dare to harm what is mine. You starve her, scorned her, and cast her out. You looked upon a queen and saw only a slave." Marcus trembled violently. "Majesty, I did not know. Forgive my ignorance." "Ignorance is no shield for cruelty," Theron boomed, his voice echoing off the rocks. "You lead this pack. Her well-being was your sacred duty. You have failed not only her, but your goddess and your king. Your title of Alpha is hereby stripped from you. You will live out your days as the lowest Omega, and you will learn the meaning of the mercy you never showed her." He turned his gaze to Seraphina, who was weeping silently. "And you saw a prize for your vanity in the one who saved my life. You will have no fine pelts. You will have nothing." His judgment was absolute, his power undeniable. He then turned back to Alara, his entire demeanor softening once more. He held out his hand. "Your silence is at an end, my love. Your suffering is over. Come with me. Let us show them all what a true queen looks like." For the first time, Alara felt a sound bubbling in her throat. It was not a word, not yet. It was a sob of relief, of joy, of a soul finally set free. She placed her small, trembling hand in his large, steady one. As their fingers intertwined, a jolt of pure energy, of destiny fulfilled, surged between them. He pulled her gently from the cave and into the sunlight, standing beside her as they faced the world together. The sight of the mighty Alpha King holding the hand of the scarred Omega, his expression one of fierce, unequivocal devotion, sent a shockwave through the pack members who had gathered. Their mockery died on their lips, replaced by awe and terror. Alara stood tall, her head held high, the king's strength flowing into her. Her scars no longer felt like a source of shame. They were a testament to her survival, a map of her journey to this very moment. They were the story he had read, the reason he had found her. They were beautiful because he saw them as such. She was not worthless, She was a queen, and her reign, a reign of kindness and strength, was just beginning. If this story of finding worth in the eyes of love moved you, show your support. Like this video, subscribe for more tales of fated love, and comment below with what you think Alara's first words to her king should be. Your engagement helps us bring more stories like this to life.